The Evolution of a Bad Boy, written by Susanna Thompson, narrated by Sarah Sampino. Chapter 15. What the hell happened to you, Dylan? He realized that he had zoned out and refocused his attention on Kayla.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
No, you didn't. You usually don't miss a thing, and you always know the right thing to say. But now you're not even paying attention anymore. What is going on with you? Kayla demanded.
I've just got a lot on my mind right now, he told her.
You've only got one thing on your mind, she snapped. Just do her already and move on. She was right about one thing. Getting naked with Celeste consumed his thoughts, but he didn't want to move on. He wanted to keep getting naked with her.
What do you want, Kayla?
His tone was impatient. I said that I can't hook up with you anymore. I have a boyfriend, she announced. He was happy for her.
That's great.
Dylan smiled at her. That's all you have to say? We've been having sex for a year. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Tears glittered in her eyes. He had no experience dealing with emotional women, and he felt like he was walking through a minefield.
It was amazing. That was some of the best sex I've ever had.
She closed her eyes. Well, I have my answer. When she looked at him again, her gaze was hard. Don't you even want to know who my boyfriend is? Dylan didn't really care, but he obliged her.
Who is he?
It's Andrew. You know, your girlfriend's ex. Her lips twisted into an ugly smile. I guess he'll be getting all my best now. Kayla had never been a bitchy girl. Dylan was disturbed to discover she was capable of such venom.
Is that why you went after him? To hurt Celeste?
Not everything is about your precious Celeste, she retorted. Maybe I want a guy who's into me. Andrew can't take his eyes off me. When he's around me, it's like he doesn't even notice that any other girl exists. This was not the time to bring up that he had made it clear to her from the beginning that he wasn't a one-woman kind of a man. She had been the one who was pretending that she was okay with their arrangement.
I'm glad you found what you were looking for, Kayla.
Me too. She began to walk away from him. See you around, Dylan, she threw back at him. He finally got into his car. The student parking lot was nearly empty now, and he waited to make sure that Kayla drove away before he took off. She was upset, but his conscience was clear. He had never lied to her. It wasn't his fault that she had wanted more than he could give her. Dylan wondered how Celeste would take the news that Andrew was dating Kayla. It was Olivia, not Celeste, who was upset about Andrew's new girlfriend. She had beaten Dylan to the punch by calling Celeste with the news. Celeste then called him after spending most of the afternoon and evening at Olivia's house.
Are you okay?
Dylan asked her. Yeah, she said. Why wouldn't I be? He smiled to himself, thinking that he and Celeste were more alike than she thought.
He was your boyfriend.
Now there was a pause. I guess I'm over him. He couldn't see her since they were on the phone, but he imagined her shrugging after that statement. His mood had lightened considerably, and he realized that he had been expecting some kind of drama with Celeste.
I'm glad,
he said, and he meant it. He had the urge to kiss her, but it had nothing to do with sex, oddly enough. I just feel so bad for Olivia, she exclaimed. She's more upset now than I was when Andrew broke up with me. Once again, Dylan inexplicably had a surge of feel-good emotions. He reminded himself that he was supposed to be commiserating with Celeste over Olivia.
Hopefully she'll get over him too.
I hope so. There was another pause. Weren't you and Kayla,
Yeah,
he confirmed.
But it was just a casual thing. She wasn't my girlfriend.
He almost added, not like you, and then he wondered where that thought had come from. "That's right," Celeste agreed. "You did tell me that you don't want a serious relationship." It was a reminder for Celeste that he wasn't the kind of guy she should be involved with. Yet she was powerfully drawn to him and looked forward to spending time with him. She would get this surge of excitement every time she saw him approaching. It was crazy how much he was in her thoughts. Her mind kept replaying the last time they had been alone together. She was unable to banish the erotic memory, and she became hot with desire at the mere thought of his touch. It was getting worse with each passing day that she saw him, but couldn't indulge her passion for him. She had trouble concentrating in her classes because she kept drifting off into all kinds of naughty fantasies about Dylan.
"I'm going crazy thinking about you,"
Dylan told her on the phone Thursday night.
"Please tell me you'll come over this weekend."
She had already made her decision. "I'll come over," she promised.
"I can't wait,"
he said. "Me too," she admitted. Surprisingly, Dylan didn't say anything sexual. He didn't even send her any dirty text messages. Their unspoken thoughts were conveyed in the intensely charged atmosphere between them on Friday. They stared at each other for a full minute beside Celeste's locker that morning.
"I'd invite you to come watch us practice tonight, but I'm afraid I'll forget all the songs if you're there,"
Dylan said.
"I don't even know how I'm going to make it through the movie tomorrow."
"Let's just watch TV," she suggested. There was no way she'd be able to sit through a 2-hour movie with her anticipation building to a fever pitch.
"Good idea."
He became lost in her eyes again until the warning bell rang. Dylan didn't know what was wrong with him. He hadn't been this nervous since he first started having sex. Celeste was ready to have sex with him. He was sure of it, but it was having a strange effect on him. His confidence was slipping the closer he got to getting what he wanted. It wasn't like him to have performance anxiety. He had to snap out of it before tomorrow night. If he faltered, Celeste might change her mind. Hopefully, his jam session tonight would help him relax. Celeste, on the other hand, was able to let go of her worry. Once she made a decision, she didn't stress about it. She would usually focus on what she needed to do to attain her goal, but Dylan already wanted her as much as she wanted him. He was likely to have condoms at his house, so all she had to do was get ready for her date. Instead of spending all day Saturday waiting for the time to arrive, she went to the indoor ice skating rink with Lily and Olivia. They were on a mission to cheer up Olivia, and the three of them did have fun. Being on the ice brought back childhood memories when life was more carefree. Celeste hadn't told her friends about her plans with Dylan. She felt that it was private, and it was also not the time to talk about boyfriends with Olivia. She got in the shower and shaved her legs when she returned home from her outing with her friends. Celeste let her hair dry naturally as she ate dinner with her parents. She wore a pair of jeans and a sweater because the evenings were cooler now. Her makeup consisted of only some pale lipstick. She didn't bother with blush because her skin was already slightly flushed with excitement. Dylan picked her up, and her temperature steadily increased as they neared his house. She was the one who made the first move this time. He barely had enough time to close the door before she pulled him into a kiss.
"I guess we're skipping the TV,"
he said before kissing her again. "Where's your room?" Celeste asked the next time they broke apart. He took her hand and walked with her. Then he motioned for her to go up the stairs ahead of him. Once they reached the second floor, he took the lead and showed her to his room. She didn't stop to look around because all her focus was on Dylan. He wore jeans and a white t-shirt, and he looked sexy as sin. His brown hair always had that slightly mussed look that made her want to run her fingers through it. Yet it was the intensity in his dark eyes that pulled her in deep. Taking the plunge, she stepped into his embrace. He kissed her slowly this time, savoring the moment, tasting and teasing her lips before slipping his tongue into her mouth. He fanned the flames of her desire. Wanting closer contact with his body, she slid her hands under his shirt and ran them up his chest. He responded by kissing her urgently and grasping her rear. Then he moved his hands up under her sweater and unhooked her bra. Dylan pulled away from her long enough to lift her sweater over her head and remove her bra. He yanked his t-shirt off and threw it on the floor along with her discarded clothes. Celeste pressed herself against him and enjoyed the feeling of skin on skin. Heat unfurled low in her belly at this intimate contact. They kissed passionately until Dylan broke the kiss and moved his mouth down her throat to her collarbone. Celeste tipped her head back and moaned as he flicked his tongue teasingly at her nipples.
"Do you want more?"
His husky voice inflamed her further with the seductive question. "Yes," she gasped. He took her nipple into his mouth while his hands undid her jeans. Then he straightened up to look into her eyes. Celeste pushed her jeans down her legs and stepped out of them. She unzipped Dylan's jeans, and he took them off. He bent forward and slowly pulled her panties down her legs. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she stepped out of her panties to stand naked before him. He kissed her in a surprisingly tender manner before he took her hand to lead her to his bed. She sat down and lay back while he stood gazing down at her. His eyes traveled the length of her body before returning to her face.
"You're gorgeous, Celeste."
Of course, he would know the perfect thing to say, but the way he said it did make her feel beautiful. "You're not so bad yourself," she smiled, and her eyes moved over him appreciatively. She swallowed nervously when he removed his underwear. This was really happening. Dylan came to lay on the bed with her, and his hot kiss made her forget her momentary apprehension. His hand slid down between her legs, making her moan. It was different than the last time, because she was completely exposed to him. She felt free to indulge herself in lustful abandon, and she boldly explored his body with her hands. Celeste began to stroke him the way she had last time, but she soon became distracted by the pleasure he was giving her. She closed her eyes as her approaching climax became a desperate, all-consuming need. Dylan rolled away from her and took a condom out of the nightstand after she came. He put it on while her breathing began to return to normal.
"So wet and ready,"
he rasped after he slipped a finger inside her. He positioned himself between her legs, and Celeste braced herself. Dylan entered her with one quick thrust and froze when she cried out in pain. His eyes went wide with shock. Celeste couldn't stand to see him look at her in that horrified way. "Don't stop," she pleaded, and awkwardly moved her hips in a clumsy attempt to mimic what she had seen the woman in the porno movie do. Dylan groaned and began to thrust into her while she bit her lip to keep from crying out again. He finished quickly and moved off of her to collapse on the bed beside her. His breathing was ragged, and he flung his arm up to cover his eyes. Celeste watched him, unsure of what she was supposed to do or say now. After a moment, he moved his arm off his face and turned an accusatory gaze on her. She had just given up her virginity to a guy she had only been seeing for a month, but he was the one who was distraught.
"Why didn't you tell me you were a virgin?"
"What difference does it make?" Celeste asked.
"I don't do virgins,"
Dylan yelled. She was getting angry now, too. "Isn't that what this was about? Remember when you said that you wanted to try a good girl? That's why you were after Melissa?"
"I was never going to have sex with Melissa,"
he said in indignation.
"I was just having a little fun flirting with her. Fuck! I never would have touched you if I knew you were a virgin."
She couldn't believe this. Dylan, the notorious player, was seriously upset about having sex with her. "Well, I'm not a virgin anymore, so there's no use going on about it. What's done is done."
"How could you just give it up to me?"
Dylan demanded.
"You're not even drunk."
"Now you're blaming me?" Celeste shot back. You've been trying to seduce me since the first day I talked to you. Anyway, what's so terrible about what happened?"
"It was a mistake,"
he said. "A mistake," she fumed. "How can you say that?"
"This will never work,"
he told her with a resentful glare.
"We're too different."
"So that's it," she retorted. "You're worried that I'll become attached to you. Don't flatter yourself." She stood up and began putting her clothes back on. "It's not like I was expecting to cuddle or anything. I knew what I was getting myself into." Now he felt remorse for what he had said. Her first time should have been special, and it shouldn't have been with him.
"Celeste, I'm sorry."
"Whatever. Just drive me home and I'll be out of your hair." She zipped up her jeans and pulled her sweater on over her head. He followed her as she swept out of his room.
"Celeste, are you okay?"
"Fine." She glanced back at him. "You might want to put your clothes on before we leave." Dylan realized that he was still wearing the condom and grimaced when he saw the blood on it. After disposing of it in the bathroom, he returned to his room and got dressed quickly, cursing himself the entire time. She hadn't seemed like a virgin, although he had no experience with virgins. He had heard the rumors about her and Tommy, and he had assumed that they were true. Even if they weren't, he had been convinced that she had slept with her boyfriend. They had been together for months. How was it possible to be with someone that long and not act on your desire? Celeste was standing near the front door and staring off into space when he went downstairs. She snapped out of it as he approached her and didn't say a word to him as she flung open the door. They walked to his car in silence. She ignored him during the drive to her house while he tried to think of something to say, something that would make things better. He tried to take her hand when they arrived in her driveway, but she rejected his overture. "I got the message loud and clear, Dylan. Don't worry. This isn't my first breakup." She got out of the car and walked stiffly to her front door. He watched her enter the house without glancing back at him even once. Dylan didn't ever remember feeling as terrible as he did right now.